Let's see, I just looked up reality meditation number 2, the now experiment. Yeah, is that what you wanted to talk about?
Well, like I said, we can go through some of these, and you can make a comment. And I said in the last show that any one of these meditations can be worth the price of admission. Really,
Hmm.
it can be so valuable.
And yet they're so simple, and to me, they seem so simple that they're easy to do, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, this is to bring you into the moment as to the now as close as we come, and just get people to realize that they're not living now, they're living in the past or ideas of the future. You probably have some thoughts on it yourself.
I like the reality meditation because again, it raises a lot of questions. It has something to do with all these. You ask lots of questions, so
Mm-hmm.
you invite people to relax and to say the word now. Say the word now to yourself, and but my feeling is kind of like there was a point where something happened, and I was living as though there was only one day. Like this lasted maybe 10 years or something.
Oh,
It
really?
was like it was just one day,
Mm-hmm.
and that could be called the now. So and
Mm-hmm.
then that sort of dropped, and it gave way to something more that I would call. They use the word this now. A lot of people say this.
Such as it is.
Maybe, but it just like it depends how you define things.
Just here, yeah, yeah.
But the now, the sense that there's only one day, kind of gave way. Like that stopped. I no longer experienced it, but what I experienced was seemed to be um, more immediate in some way, more like
Uh-huh.
just more immediate.
To me, the term, and I know it probably doesn't make any sense, the term am, just the word am,
Yeah.
uh, is probably that for me, what you call this.
Mhm.
It's am, a feeling of, you know, not even I am, but everything
Yeah.
has this amness to it as it appears. I shouldn't even try to bring it up.
Well,
You have those experiences.
yeah. I mean, there's people talk of I am or I amness maybe, and then which can be a pretty subtle state and a great place to live from. Just I amness,
Hmm.
and then if that I drops away and there's an amness, and we're playing with words
Yeah, well,
and getting
that's what you do. See, we got to develop this, or I have maybe this third eye more. Maybe we can
get some.
talk together without words.
Yeah. I don't use that third eye much. It's kind of spontaneously you'll become active, but
We're going to have to. I'm going to have to talk to you about that more sometime.
yeah.
I won't use your precious time here now, but
Well,
I
anytime.
find that very fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you sense a call to paying attention to the third eye or pursuing some
it's
activity?
not that. It's just trying to see clearly what what you're referring to or what your experience is. I guess because either I don't call it that or I don't have that. I don't know.
No, for me it's just I close my eyes, especially when I'm going to sleep. Close my eyes, and in the center of the field of vision, when your eyes are closed, lights appear and they take shape. They might
Right.
look like a tunnel. They might be like a spinning clock.
Right.
They might take shapes of buildings.
Hmm.
Um, but when I first had the experiences when I was a kid, most most powerfully, it wasn't really the shapes it took, but it was more what it was. There was like a knowing to it, like it knew me.
Uh-huh.
So I identified it as myself, and I call that the I am. It had the
Ah, beautiful.
totally the I am.
Beautiful.
Um,
How old were you then?
well, I had experiences with the I am um, from ages like 7 up to around 12 and
Ah,
13,
okay.
and then forgot about it, and then reinvestigated around age 25, and that third eye again became active.
Well, I know eh, my experience in those years. I know I've been out of my body in those early years, and you don't think that much of it. It's that twilight between, well, at least for me it was, between wake and sleep, and you actually leave your body. I'm not able to do that now, which I love to explore more, but I'm not. I've tried to do it here in my latter years. I thought, well, why didn't I pay more attention to that and develop that more? Probably you were smart enough to continue working with your third eye.
The out of body experiences happened spontaneously. They were very powerful. I never really tried to have them. I've always been kind of someone who would kind of wait more wait for things to happen and
Mm-hmm.
let things happen, as opposed to try to, inspire them or bring them about.
Mm-hmm.
Always seem to make.
Put yourself in a place where they can happen.
Yeah, because I mean these are powerful things. It's not something I intuitively knew not to mess with it.
Mm.
Let it mess with me a little, but I wasn't going to use any conscious effort to
Mm-hmm.
make things happen, especially with Kundalini and things like that. It can be
Yeah,
powerful.
either did I, and I don't. I know I've had some experiences with Kundalini, but I don't understand it at all, and that's almost like a separate study.
Yeah, it's kind of a subtle biology, really, but
Yeah, and maybe that relates to going out of the body, because I know some people feel those vibrations
yeah,
just before they leave.
yeah,
I,
it's also yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, I never experienced that, but I have experienced the, electrical feelings that I guess has to do with that. But I know so little about it. I don't think about it or talk about it.
yeah. I mean, for some people, that's their. I mean, it's something you could pursue if you want,
Yes.
instead of what all this stuff is, and try to, get instead of be fat. You can be fascinated with anything, but if you're
Mm-hmm.
fascinated with awareness, then you end up, pursuing non-duality. But yeah, I mean, people.
Yeah, and I'm not a very spiritual person myself.
Mm,
I feel like I'm much more practical type of person. The whole idea of holy feelings and all of those things that some people get out of rituals and
yeah,
that sort of thing does nothing for me.
yeah, yeah.
To me, I don't connect it with what I am or God or any of this.
Right.
It's I'm just dealing with what is. I'm not dealing with holiness as it's thought of today.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's all anyone has to do is just, which is, again, what your book's about, is just look at yourself, ask some questions, and
Yeah, let's just take a cold hard look at what this is. What is here? See, I've had a lot of fun getting into some of your own feelings and thoughts. I think it's brought us together a little better. I feel like I know you better, and I appreciate the fact that you even share an opinion or an experience with me. I suppose in other times during interviews, the interviewer would say, well, let's stay on the subject, but I appreciate, being a little more casual about it all. And
well, all these, I've done, I don't know how many interviews, I don't know, 50 or 60, but my main focus is to try to get to know someone, because, I mean, if anyone's worth their non-dual salt, which they are, people I talk to, I mean, then it's, this teaching of non-duality should come through just in whatever they say. So I think that's a great way to, impart the teaching.
yeah, that could be, if you're aware of what it is. Yes, I suppose so. But I don't know for myself whether that does or not, because I spend so little time really talking about this with other people that I stay normally within the average bounds of conversation. Sometimes I'll throw something out just for fun, but I don't know that you find I in regular life make many allusions to the non-dual. Maybe I do, and I just don't know.
Well, I mean, don't you feel that just a person's presence says a lot and all that? Or how do you feel about that?
I think it can. Yes, I do. I think it can. Also, though, maybe it's just my own opinion, you feel that there has to be a certain sensitivity on the part of the other person to find any attraction or any sense of interest, or get anything out of just being in the presence of somebody else who has an understanding. I don't know what your experience has been, because you've been, with a lot of these different people and in a lot of situations. But I just look for a sensitivity, I guess, with other people.
Yeah. So how does that bear on an interview? Like when you're being interviewed, so how do you expect certain questions that might make a person more responsive to what you're offering? I don't really ask questions like standard questions like what's enlightenment, or
I probably couldn't answer you either. No, I this is virtually my first experience. I did a short one with David when the book first came out.
Yeah.
So I really had no idea what to expect. I was just hoping you wouldn't be too rough on me. And
oh no, I wouldn't be rough on me and start talking like Wei Wu Wei and the presence of the absence of
the presence of the absence.
I'd have to pretend, oh yeah, I know that.
Yeah, that wouldn't that be fun though? Sit down with him and spend a little while. His letters, contained so much, but they also contained everyday things and stuff about what was going on around him. But he never really told me much about his own life, which was interesting. I didn't really learn about his earlier life until I read a book called Only by Failure. I forget the author's name. Maybe you have it. I don't know. But it tells about his life putting on plays and stuff at the university. It might touch briefly on his life as an Egyptologist.
What was the title of that book?
Only by Failure, I believe it is.
I have his books, all his books from Sentient, and I think I have all his books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was written about him,
Oh, about him? No.
about him, yeah, and about his life. It stops short of getting into his life in the non-dual sense. It doesn't really do much, if anything, talk much about that. It's just mainly about his how he used to put on plays there at the university and was so original.
Mm.
And so I think he had a thing about Hatshepsut, the Egyptian pharaoh queen, female pharaoh. There are a lot of allusions and there's different things to her and to that situation. But if you run across that book, pick it up. You probably you'll see a whole other side of
Yeah.
Gray that you didn't before. The only thing he really had told me is, and maybe it was even Douglas that told me this, that his family raised racehorses, and that was his sort of his heritage, and he was born a Catholic,
Mm.
his upbringing, but he never talked much about himself or his past. At one time he brought up the fact that he was an Egyptologist and saw the Book of Thomas. Do you have any more of the reality experiences you wanted to?
We can go on to some of them. I think there are a couple that I think are more powerful than some of the others, like the one with the cup and light. Is that what it was?
Oh, the cup and light experiment.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
It has been for some people. They've said, that's when it all came through to me. Did you actually turn out the lights and do it?
No, I didn't actually. Didn't do it. I read it and I can see this is a powerful experiment.
Yeah, try doing it. When you're home and there's nobody there to make fun of you. It's kind of interesting to do, and I've had people say, yeah, that's when it all came open for me. So that is a good
Yeah.
experiment.
Yeah, the light of consciousness. I'm just looking at it. Yeah, very powerful.
Yeah, I'll be actually using it in the course that I'm that I've written up. I'll be using it for the first. Let's see. No, I guess I used it in my earlier one. That's where I got my comments on it. The earlier workshop or course that I used to do. I was even doing this in adult education classes at one time.
Really?
So, but I wasn't, I think I was ahead of the curve then, maybe.
Yes.
But it wasn't that much interest. People didn't have anything to relate it to either, I'm sure, once the class was over.
Yeah, I don't know how they would unless they had their own experience, and people wouldn't really follow up on those experiences. You tend to ignore them.
Yeah, there were some books out, and we actually used to sell books when the correspondence course was going on, and I remember several years later, after the course we no longer had the course, that Hong Kong University Press wrote me, and they had 300 copies of the All Else is Bondage. Wondered if I wanted to pick them up to buy them. And I didn't have much money at that time. I wished I would have. I would have loved to have those to give out, and, to share with other people.
Yeah.
It was such a special book to me.
Hmm. And in your chapter, on the cup and light experiment, this just shows where you're going with this. You say, chair is not the object chair, nor is it the concept chair, nor is it the word chair, nor is it the sound chair. It is the present active perceiving of the subjective sensory experience. whether it is sitting in it or falling out of it or just noticing it. There's no actual chair. Here's the concept, the word, the symbol, which may represent the perception. The actuality is in the here and now perceptual experience. So,
yeah, I think that has a chance to come through because people, first they see the cup and well, no need for me to go through it, but are able to relate it to light and then able to relate it to the light of awareness. Kind of takes you step by step inward.
Yeah, this so-called meditation or experiment, can bring you to that, and it's out of that actuality of the here and now. Just quoting the actuality as the here and now perceptual experience. I think that you start to see life then as that, what we were saying earlier, that oniric episode, kind of that vivid dream. Kind of takes that on, at least for me.
Yeah. And then as you live it, you begin to put all those things together. The dreamlike, which had, I know, Wei Wu Wei doesn't go into it real deeply in his books, but it had a very powerful effect on me. What he did say, and but the idea, is putting them all together, the being in the now, and then the dreamlike experience, and then the fact that perceiving here and now is what everything is, and putting all those together gives you something to a framework to do your own non-dual living, you might say, your own experience of the non-dual, and make it something ongoing rather than just a one-time look at. And so that's sort of the thinking behind all of these, to put them all together.
And putting them all, so again, in regards to putting them all together, all 11 meditations, I mean, did you have to think much as far as the order to put them in?
Well, they just sort of fell into that order. I don't think I did a whole lot of thought. I had, it kind of came with what order to put the chapters in, and I think I'd already had the experiment hooked up to a chapter that it seemed to go with. So they weren't created at the same time as the chapter was, but I think I already had them attached to a chapter, and they kind of fell in place, and you take a look to see that they still do make some kind of sense when you do them. So
yeah.
That's kind of how that worked out. I tell you the truth, I still do them myself sometimes, and find them fun. They're more fun.
Why do you do them? Why? What would be the just the enjoyment, or just?
It points you back, like this one, the cup and light experiments, or of course, the fasting of the mind, that's something you can...
Yeah, that's a fascinating one.
Waiting in a doctor's office or something, and that can be quite adaptable to most circumstances. The others, if you have a group, you can do, I don't know, the one in consciousness in your body, or see some of the others I was doing. And there's only one or two, maybe only one, where I suggest you get other people around you and do it, and that's where you look for the great imposter.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool one too.
Yeah, and that, of course, is built around Huang Po's comment that a perception cannot perceive. That's supposedly the idea for that. You ever read much of Huang Po? He's another one who really spoke to me. Some of the things he said. I haven't read much lately, but there were a number of little items that he had that just blew me away. And that was one of them.
I missed the name of that person. Who was that?
I used two names in the book. Huang Po, Huang
Okay.
Po.
Yeah.
And let's see, what was the other name they used for him?
I don't know. I'm just flipping through to find the.
Yeah, I'm looking through the book. I can't think of it right now.
Oh, I see.
Give
Hsi Yun.
oh,
Hsi Yun.
Hsi Yun.
I don't know how to pronounce.
No, I don't know these.
The name, the very, very subtle Chinese pronunciations.
And there's a very good translation of him by John Blofield. But it's a really fun book to read if you want to see some of the origins of non-dual and sort of how he got started as who he, his ministry, I guess you would call it in our day. So,
Yeah, I think I have that book. Yeah.
Do you? Yeah. I think it has a bird on the cover in black and white and gray, something like that. But
I think it's a black cover. I could put if I turn around,
yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah, they change covers too once in a while.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Get
At
books.
Wang Po, since the beginning, not a thing is.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Zen, pretty all Zen.
Now
Zen.
isn't that, you tell that to somebody and that's like you're saying there's nothing here. And you can't just tell that to somebody, but when you run across it and you give him the credibility, that he had and still has among many people, you really try to figure out, what's he saying? What does he mean by that? And that's where I had a lot of fun with, bringing in the modern day physicists telling us the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't really asked you about that, but you do write about these well-known experiments in quantum theory and
Yeah, well, I'm
non-duality.
we look more erudite than I am. I have, read a few books for the layman on it and found these experiments to be very fascinating because they fell right in with the non-dual, and doubly fascinating because these were things that were being said, 1,000 years ago by who knew what they were talking about, and here we are finally getting around to them with our civilization.
Do you think that people like someone like Deepak Chopra brings in quantum theory to some of his kind of melange of different spiritual themes?
I wished I could give you an opinion. I have not read or heard of anything that he's done. I'm sorry.
And,
I haven't followed the present day movement.
and other people use quantum theory. They use it to put forth their own spiritual theories. And I'm just wondering, do you think it could become? To what extent could it become a distraction to get involved? And you don't do that in your book by any. You use it just for support. You're not trying to. It's not part of your meditations or anything. Your meditations are very real, but can a person get off track by getting too immersed in quantum theory and trying to, what do you call it with the way, bring the waves, what am I saying with the waves? You know the term, precipitate the waves, or whatever the term is.
Collapse
the waves to, yeah, right, manifest jaguar. I mean, can it become a distraction? I mean,
well, I suppose it could. Like you said, I try to use it only for support. I would like to see more people that are, very astute or very schooled in quantum physics to come to understand the non-dual and let them see where they can, fit all this together. I think that could be very fascinating. I'd like to read something like that. I don't know if it's. I think there is a book that does some of that. What's it called? You probably would know it better than I.
There were a couple written some years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. They're right, but I'm ready for somebody to write a new one now and bring some of these things together. That would be kind of fun.
There are people, physicists, that are very much part of the non-duality scene. There are some, but I find that I can understand, I can read the experiments and understand them, and they just don't kind of stick with me. So I don't really, it's not something I pursue or.
Right.
But for other people, that it can be very meaningful. But it is fascinating that the whole idea of non-locality, where you change a particle or subatomic particle, and in its pair, which can be some distance away, gets changed at the very same time without any
no lag.
Time lag in it.
Time, yeah. Those are kind of mind-blowing things. You wonder, what does that really mean? And that's gets together with the interest you spoke of earlier.
Yeah.
So
can we travel through? How can we use that to travel through? Faster than light.
Yeah, maybe we could offer a book on how to travel in the non-dual. And,
right.
Get from here to there.
well, and understanding. I mean, if these things become scientific reality, this movement, this travel through the dimensions, travel faster than time. If our culture starts to live that way, you need a philosophy or a way of seeing things that would go along with that, and it seems like non-duality would go along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Non-separation would go along with any culture or civilization that that accesses speeds greater than the speed of light.
Yeah, and a way to do it just in the body without machinery, that sort of thing. I mean, you start just studying the body as itself, and it's amazing when you see the non-dual and you realize that you don't even really know how you speak, that's something that just happens by itself, really. And how you think, well, someday hopefully we could take it even further and find out there are other things we can do naturally that we can't do now. That are maybe once done in early times.
Yeah, that points to the implications of your title, studying non-volitional living. Like, what are the implications of non-volitional living? And that's one of them. Just a way of communicating wordlessly, basically.
Yeah, and once we realize that everything we do is really non-volitional living, we say, I'm going to walk over there, the idea has to come to you, or the urge to do it, and then, you know, how do you do it? How do you, you know, people who've been paralyzed and gotten their abilities back have to spend, you know, months and sometimes years learning how to walk again. And we just don't know how we do it. We have to just keep working at it until we do. When we're a little child, we have to learn how to walk, but we pick it up, you know, without people telling us that we have to or we should. And we pick up talking, we pick up everything else without being taught. And I know exactly where I'm going with this, but other than the fact that everything in our life is really something that happens outside of our real awareness, that we don't really realize how we're doing all of these things, and moving our body and speaking and thinking. I don't know how I make my heart beat. If I had to, I'd probably die because I forget.
Yeah, really, you can, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, you know, that all that stuff about what we think we have will over really could be part of that first reality meditation where you're asking questions, all these questions, you know, what's my name, my job, my gender, and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
You apply to will, you know, what am I, you know, what can I will?
That's right.
Will that that I'm here at a certain time, and you can, you know, look at that somehow. So you can put labels on things that you think you have.
Yeah.
You can tag volition to.
A lot of times I don't even know how I got out of bed in the morning. I'll just be laying there, and all of a sudden, I'm aware of it when I'm doing it. I just get up.
Yeah.
And it just happens. It isn't this process of, well, let's see, I've got to get up now. I've got to, you know, start moving my leg out and all of this stuff. It's just, there's this urge and it happens.
Yeah.
People need to notice those little things.
I think that's kind of a function of living in the now, or like I was saying, you know, as though there's only one day. You're not really
that's amazing.
Really getting up and going to sleep, you know. There's just this one thing.
Amazing.
Just this one flow.
Anything else going on that you were wondering about? Excuse me.
Pardon? I'm sorry.
I was just wondering if there was anything else you were wondering about. Have you read Terence Gray's last book, Unworldly Wise? As the owl remarked.
Owl one? Yeah, I did. I read that a couple of years ago.
Oh, all right. Yeah. He had the publisher send me one with a note he wrote on it. It just arrived in the mail. It was just such a wonderful surprise.
Yeah, that's nice. That book, so that's a short book, and that's one you can almost pretty much can understand it. I think.
Yeah.
It's not true for all
I
books.
think it's a classic myself. I'm surprised that it isn't at the top of the list on, you know, a lot of the non-dual reading things, because as you said, you can almost understand it.
That one you can almost.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Yet there are very popular people that are pretty still have some challenging books, and yet they're popular. Some of the modern teachers. Yeah, well, like I said earlier, Wei Wu Wei. I mean, Douglas Harding is still pretty popular, and of course Ramana and everyone. And
That's good.
Wei Wu Wei could use a little boost.
Yeah, you got to buy one of those big English. That should go with this first book you buy. They should give you that big Oxford English dictionary.
Yeah, well, yeah.
With it. And, That way you can look up all those words.
Yeah.
And they're not, I mean, even educated people don't always use some of those words. I know they come from Goethe and other philosophers, but maybe he uses them in different ways too. I'm not sure. Like he used obnubilation to mean the conditioned reflex of constantly looking in the wrong direction. Meaning, I suppose, that we look outward at concepts and thoughts and things and don't look inward at, what is before those, what is this here now, from which they all seem to arise.
That's what it's all about. That's what your book's.
Yeah, and in mine, I've tried to make it as understandable as possible without trying to, I think some people purposely want to be mystical or mysterious. And then there's the poet in some people. I don't seem to have any poet in me. So what I try to do is simply make it as accessible as possible, as simple as possible, so that it kind of works the opposite way maybe Terence Gray did.
Yeah, I think you do. You ask a lot of questions, and also anyone who's listening to all this, if they're interested in a workshop with you, they get a good sense of you. They get a good sense of what a workshop would be like.
Yeah.
What it would be like to hang out with you, and
I might get a lot of refusals because of that.
You have a lot of refusals? What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, if they don't like the interview of me, then
well,
I was just being silly.
No. I don't know if they like me, but who knows what's going on?
Who cares? Yes. We're having fun together, though, the two of us.
Yeah.
Whether anybody else does or not, I think that's the point.
I just think it's so great that you are steeped in that era of the 60s. And another thing, I mean, we're talking way too long here, but another thing was that, the whole beat generation was going on around then.
Uh-huh.
And the beats definitely helped to kind of, introduce our culture to non-duality.
The beat Zen was going on, although I guess you'd call it Gato Zen if you were involved in Zen. But yeah, I read Jack Kerouac's On the Road, and in fact, that's one of the things that helped inspire me to take my trip to Europe.
Yeah.
He'd already been around the U.S., and I had On the Road, and there was another guy, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, I guess it was.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And he was one of the beat poets, and there were a lot of people in those days, and they were exploring different things and trying to figure out, what is this all about? What's going on here as far as our life and our living, and that's something I don't know that many people had questioned. Over the centuries, you sort of take your occupation from your father and go on with that, and you don't question things. So these people were doing it, and some of their answers were bad answers, and some of the answers were pretty cool.
They never really. They were somewhat steeped in Buddhism. Kerouac and Gary Schneider, I guess, and
yeah.
But they never really met up with they never really clashed with the Wei Wu Weis, the Douglas Hardings. I don't think I never saw. There was this.
Yeah.
Both schools or groups of people were very, very non-dual, and Wei Wu Wei has a Buddhist heritage, I guess, and but they never. In Paul Rapp's, but I don't know how much those two groups came together and fed each other. I wonder what would have happened.
Yeah, because they never did, and they certainly could have, because their literature was part of mine before Wei Wu Wei, and those things, I was very much a teenager in high school when I read Kerouac. He was from Denver, you know. He talked.
He talks about Denver, and he was from Massachusetts. I believe he grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh, did he? Okay.
But part of On the Road takes place in Denver. Yeah, that's where the main character in the Dean Moriarty.
Yes.
That was his name in the book On the Road.
Mm-hmm.
It's from Denver. What's his real name? I can't remember.
Cassidy.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it? Something Cassidy. I want to say Jack Cassidy, but that's the actor. But I think that was his last name. Yeah, and once in a while you'll see a piece in the paper about that and where they lived and what they did, and people who want to revisit that era.
That powerful movement, it was an accessible movement. The language was accessible, and in the Harding, Wei Wu Wei group, and even Jean Klein at that time. I guess you didn't run into him. They were more quiet, more laid back, more slow.
With the whole street people movement. People started flooding the streets there in California and living out on the streets, and just total upheaval of civilization in that time for those people. Maybe that was a part of it too. Haight Ashbury groups,
Yeah, right, yeah.
I went there too late. I was visiting a friend of mine, and I wanted to go visit there, and it was just normal corner.
Well, that brings up another group that was going on with the whole psychedelic thing, which, the psychedelic group, Kerouac himself wasn't into that. I guess Ginsberg was.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So the
experimenting with LSD and
the Beat group met up with the psychedelic group, but still they were separate from the Harding, Wei Wu Wei, the non-duality group. But they all fed into the non-duality movement somehow.
I feel like didn't Ram Dass come out of that?
Yeah, Ram Dass was Timothy Leary.
Oh, yeah, Timothy Leary.
At that time.
Yeah, that type of.
And they all kind of arose independently. The Beats, the psychedelic people, the non-duality people. They're all different schools, kind of. Schools of non-duality, really.
But you look back, that was a strange era.
Strange era. And Woodstock was its own event.
Late 50s, early 60s. And that's when even Thomas Merton was.
Merton was around then, and he had a Zen. And he was published by the same, what's the name of the publishing house that published Kerouac and Ginsberg and Heights Press. So even Merton interfaced with Zen and the Beats.
Well, yeah, but there was some cross pollination there in some ways of all of these groups, and it's kind of interesting that so much was happening during that time. It was kind of a good time to grow up in. I know it rather alarmed me in many ways. I wasn't one of those happy hippies that wanted to just go along with it all. I found it rather alarming that civilization was getting out of control here, and so I don't look back on those fondly in terms of the great times I had, but I do look on it as a really creative time.
Yeah,
socially, politically, whatever, spiritually, and it's just too bad that the drug movement happened to, at least from my point of view, happened to happen at the same time. I know people first started out experimenting with it for spiritual reasons, I think, but then it just turned into, what drugs usually turn into for people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, there is still the whole entheogen movement where people use these drugs, I guess, from a shaman's point of view, and
Oh, true. That's right. It's a good
use
point.
that, I guess, but
Yeah, the mystic mushrooms
yeah,
and things like that.
it's another part of the story.
Yeah.
Someone's got to write a huge textbook on non-duality.
Yeah, I find out where all the roots come from.
Yeah,
Uh, and there were people that, as you look back, that term had no meaning to them, but that's what they were talking about. If you look at the mystics like Meister Eckhart and some of those others, they were trying to express those things, even St. John of the Cross, trying to express those things that were inexpressible in their way. It's been a long time since I've read any of those, so I may be talking through my hat, but, as we talked earlier, to help other people in their understanding, this is, it's a difficult subject for a lot of people, for most of us. I know it was for me. So anything you can do to help and to open people's awareness to what's going on, I think is wonderful.
yeah, thanks. Well, I try to make it accessible and try to show that everyone's, human, and to meet people at that level. And
Yeah, and this is sort of the root of it all. It's wonderful. Well, thank you. I really do, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the kindnesses you've given me, and for spending all this time with me. It's just been delightful for me to be able to talk to someone like yourself. So,
thank you. It's been great. I really enjoyed talking to you.
yes.
We'll stay in touch. We'll probably talk again. And okay, great talking to you, Galen. Great getting.
Same here. Same here. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye, Galen.
Bye-bye.